Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. So the visa bulletin has been published. This is the October visa bulletin. Some of you will be confused a little bit with the naming convention and when this visa bulletin applies. But basically, the visa bulletin is sort of badly named for what it really means, right? So we're in September. Today, they've released the visa bulletin that is called the October Visa Bulletin, and it gives us advance warning for the November interviews, right? So understand there's a sort of a weird naming convention. It's released in 1 month, it's called the next month, and it affects interviews for 2 months from now, right? So that's the first thing about it. But the visa bulletin has been published. And it's a bit of a surprise because for the diversity visa, the numbers haven't moved at all. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Share screen, and we'll share this one. Okay, so this is the visa bulletin here. Now, let me just sort of show you again what I'm talking about. This is called the visa bulletin for October 2022. And of course, it's September, so it's being published today. Now, if we look at this towards the end of the visa bulletin, there's a section that concerns DV. One is the numbers that applied in October. That's the first section, and that's the numbers that we were used to from last month, right? And then today they've published the numbers. This is like an advanced warning section, if you want to call it that. And it's published a new set of numbers, or it's supposed to be a new set of numbers. However, the numbers are all identical, right? So there's been absolutely no movement in the visa bulletin. Okay. Now, that's unusual to say the least. There have been plenty of cases where the number for a specific region hasn't changed from one visa bulletin to another. But it's very unusual that it's absolutely no change in any of the regions anywhere. And I have to say, my first thought about this is that it's a mistake. I think this could be a mistake. There's another mistake in this page. The date of the visa bulletin is dated September the 1st, 2022. That strikes me as somebody's not edited this form correctly. And this has almost been published like somebody has cut and pasted. You know, what they have to do when they create the visa bulletin is this section would have been there last month, and they have to do various edits. And it appears to me that they copied that, they replaced the early thing, but perhaps they haven't moved these numbers at all by mistake. So that's the first thing. Now, let's assume, I'm going to assume that that's not the case. If it is the case, we'll see a correction to this within a day or two, if it's the case, okay? But, and it is quite early. It shouldn't normally have been published today. It's normally published between the 8th and the 15th, and today is not a Friday, which is the only reason I've seen them do something really weird early. And so this is kind of weird all ways round. It strikes me as just a bit of a mistake. But we'll see. But let's talk about if this is real. What does it mean? Now, many people are confused about this point that I'm going to make, but I think you have to understand the point. So I'm going to talk about how the visa bulletin numbers are decided on a month-to-month basis. And I'm going to just take Africa as an example, let me just. It doesn't matter which region I take, but let's ignore the except countries for a minute. Let's just assume we're talking about Africa 5700. Now, under case number 5700, which is what the number was last month, right? Under there is some number of cases. We don't know the number of cases yet because we don't have the SEAC data, but I can tell you with absolute certainty it's not 5,699 cases that are under that 5,700 number. There's some number of holes. There's some number of cases that are not real cases, right? And so there are holes under there. But let's say, for example, let's say there are 4,000 real cases, right? And for October, from the 4,000 real cases, let's say 10% of those cases had their DS260 already processed. That means they could only have revealed 400 cases, which would be about 800 people, which would be probably a light month. Maybe they would want to schedule more than that, but I'm just sort of putting some numbers out there to explain, explain the realities of how this all happens, right? And the 10% of DS260s processed is kind of like that because some of you may have noticed they're opening DS260s in a first come, first received order. So it goes like the very earliest submissions, DS260 submissions were opened first. The day they're opened, the day they're submitted is not necessarily tied to the day that they're completed processing, but it's a bit of a clue. Obviously, if you submit your DS260 pretty early, you're more likely to be processed, early-ish as well, right? And so for the first month, let's say, just as an example, there were only 10% of all DS260s processed because we know that they processed cases of quite high case numbers. They haven't gone by case number, right? They've processed all sorts of cases. Plenty of cases have been processed to have had a letter saying your case is fully processed, even though their case number is nowhere near current, right? And so let's say across the board, they had processed 10% of the cases. On average, that means they're only going to reveal 400 of those cases. And the next month, when they come to decide how many cases they need to move the visa bulletin by, they might say, you know what, we now have 20% or 30% of the cases processed, or whatever is the number, 25%, right? And so going back to my 4,000 real case numbers, if they had moved from 10% processed to 25% processed, let's say, they would have revealed another 600 cases without even moving the visa bulletin number at all. And so they can reveal more cases, they can schedule more cases that weren't processed for the beginning of October, but they are now processed, and so they can be scheduled in November. So what could be happening, which would be a healthy sign, is that enough DS260s are being processed behind the scenes to actually make increases in the number completely unnecessary. Now, that's the logical explanation. However, I find that a little bit hard to believe across all the countries, all the regions, that there's not a single region, not a single country that's been modified by an exception and increased in its number or even decreased in its number, because there is a thing called retrogression, which is when the numbers actually decrease. So as I said right at the very beginning, my gut reaction is this feels like a mistake. However, it could be real. It could be a real thing. And maybe they've simply revealed enough cases through processing more DS260s to not need to increase the numbers at all. And for whatever reason, they decided not to decrease the numbers, which is retrogression. They decided to just leave all the numbers as they are, right? So it's possible. We'll see, I think, in a couple of days' time. But I would suggest don't panic about this. The other thing I want to say is a lot of people will look at the visa bulletin and they'll take that 5,700 number, for example, for the first month, and they would have multiplied by 12, saying, okay, if they can do that in 1 month, they're going to do that every month. And it's 5,700 cases every month times 12. They're going to get to, 57, I don't know, 68,000. They'll get to that number. And therefore, everything after that is going to fail. That type of math is completely wrong. It doesn't work for the VB process, because the density of cases is lower in the later number ranges than it is in the higher number ranges. In fact, the density is lower in the later ranges than it is in the lower ranges. Am I saying that right? I feel like I'm I'm not saying that correctly, but let me just show you what I mean there. Using, for example, Africa from 2022. You can see that looking at this, if we look at this sort of blue color here at the top, the blue color is the holes. Okay, there is no cases. So in other words, in the first 1,000 cases, there are there's 41.6% holes. That means there's only 59 or 58.4% that are real actual cases, right? This is DV 2022 data, not DV 2023. But that means that let's just get a calculator and just let's assume that the holes rate is the same, right? So 5,700 times 58.4%. Here's my percent. That means if the density was identical in the first 1,000 cases in Africa, and if we compute that through till 5,700, etc., we would come up with a 3,300 number in terms of the number of cases that are actually in the first 5,700. Right? Remember, just a moment ago, I was explaining about the 4,000. That was an assumption. But 3,300 would be a more accurate way. And that number is different in every 1,000 cases. But what you can see is towards the later numbers, there's much less real cases, right? By the time we get to here to about 30,000 in DV 2022, there's 53% of holes instead of 41%. By the time we get to the end, in the last few thousand cases, there's like 78%, 79%. You can see the numbers are changing here, right? So you can see that data, and that's a very normal thing. You see the same thing in Asia region. You see a big cutoff in Asia. This number of holes starts off, pretty well at about 36%, maybe 37%. Then there's a massive drop in the number of actual cases, a big increase in the holes, and that's when Iran and Nepal got limited. And so from that point onwards, in the rest of Asia, the holes number is about 75%, and that's very typical for Asia. And we can see that in any year, it's going to look roughly the same. We can do the same thing if we look at one of the regions. What year is this? Oh no, we can't look at really old data because actually it's not quite real data. Here's Africa in 2021. We can see there's a drop off in density towards the end. It's more pronounced again in Asia. Very significant drop off here. Another drop off there. I think that was Nepal was limited earlier than Iran in that year. So there's a decreasing number of real cases in later numbers, and for that reason, you can't just do the math of multiply by 12 with the first visa bulletin. It just doesn't work like that, right? And at the same time, there's an increase in the numbers of cases that have actually been processed, and the faster they process the cases, the less the visa bulletin has to move, at least in the first few months, right? That's how it works. So I'm hoping that's sort of making sense to you, and that, that's sort of helping your understanding a little bit. But I did want to say, just don't freak out. There's no reason to freak out about either the first visa bulletin or the second visa bulletin. You cannot assume how the rest of the year is going to look just from one or two visa bulletins. You just can't do it. Okay, so let me take a couple of questions that are related to this topic, and let's see, or if we can, first time ever. I agree with you, Nicholas. First time they've ever been like that, completely. Not the first time for one region or a couple of regions, but the fact that it's the same for all countries, all regions, it is unusual, right? Okay, let me just see if there's cordial explanation. So I'm glad that was cordial for you. Be interested to see if there's any questions about the explanation I've just given. If not, I can just answer a few questions for you. I'm just sort of reading through it at the end here. Hey, Kofi, how you doing? Second time on a live session. That's great. Just looking up here, I can't see any questions actually about this. So perhaps you're not worried about the visa bulletin, or perhaps the explanation makes sense to you. I don't know. Do you think? Okay, so this is the typical sort of panic mode that some of the people will go into. Do you think that AF38K is still safe considering the VB now? Like I say, ignore the VB now. The VB now, after 2 months, has got nothing to do with whether your case number just got more or less safe. It literally has no effect on your case number. Your number 38K Africa is safe anyway. So there is no need for you to worry. There is no need for you to freak out. This VB could just be a simple mistake, but even if it's not, I understand why that VB may be the reality. And so even if it's not, that doesn't mean that your case number just got less safe. Your case number is what it is. It didn't change because the visa bulletin just went in a certain direction, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so let me just scroll up and see if I can take a few quick questions. I didn't plan on doing this visa bulletin. I've been in all-day meetings. Didn't plan on the visa bulletin being released today. And so when I saw that it had been released, I thought I better just quickly jump on before everybody loses their mind, basically. Okay, quick question then. So is a bank statement for a joint bank account enough to show how legit a marriage is if it's attached to a marriage certificate that's been issued after the results? No. So no. Simply getting a joint bank statement doesn't make your whole relationship suddenly, bona fide, right? Suddenly a real thing. It's a piece of evidence, but there's other pieces of evidence that you might be asked for when you get married, particularly after the results, right? And the sort of evidence they're going to be looking for is they'll be looking for photos of the wedding itself. Because if you get married just like two people and there's no guests there and there's no family and everything else, then that kind of indicates a bit of a sham wedding, right? If, on the other hand, you've got a lot of family there, you had a big wedding, their family, your spouse's wedding were there, it's a big thing, then that's a more likely to be a genuine marriage. You can also show evidence that you traveled together before, that you've had email discussions and text discussions for years, and you've been dating, and you took a vacation together, and all these sort of things. All those things will help. And a bank account, yes, it's additional evidence, but it's not. It by itself, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy a CO that your relationship is real just by opening a joint bank account. I can open a joint bank account with my dog. It doesn't mean I'm married to my dog, right? So you have to be a little bit sort of, careful about how you prove that marriage. Okay. What could I say about DV 2023 and its case numbers? We don't have any real data yet, right? And I'm not going to make any predictions or guesses based on one or two visa bulletins. Some people will, but those people are not smart people. So, I'm smarter than that. I'm not going to make a prediction based on not having any real data. I'm going to wait until I've got the data in January, and I suggest you do the same thing. We know how many people are selected. We know it's too many. We know that in a well-run year, that means lower case numbers should have an advantage over higher case numbers. And so if you've got a very high case number, then you have good reason to worry this year. It's not going to be like DV 2022, where every region goes current. It's not going to be like that. And you need to understand that. And many people, again, will probably argue with me, but it's because they don't know what they're talking about. Okay. Let's see. What will happen to the 2022 cases that are still in AP? At the end of the month, September 30th, if you're still in AP at the end of the month, then your chance is gone. The only exception to that is if a judge has issued an order to say, I'm going to reserve some visas for these plaintiffs, typically for plaintiffs of lawsuits, etc. But it's too late to join a lawsuit, and I don't believe there's any lawsuit that has any realistic opportunity to get a reservation of visas. I don't think there's any lawsuit currently going for DV 2022 that is going to achieve that, because the visas are more or less spoken for. So that's the problem that those lawsuits have, even if they have the law on their side, which because the government has changed their practices a lot. I don't think the lawsuits are going to win from this point forward anyway. And I'm talking about DV 2022 specifically. I'm not talking about DV 2020 or 2021, right? Now I would say something about this. I've been watching the data presented by Zarthisius and Frank, and the government are not issuing as many as I would expect them to be issuing. I would have thought at this point, September 7th, we would be seeing 1,000 and 2,000 issuances per day. And we're not seeing that. That's quite odd to me. And so I'm watching that carefully. They've done enough in terms of scheduling to issue all of the visas that they could possibly issue, right? But there seems to be a lot of refusals going on, a lot of refusals, much higher than I would normally expect. Now, we know about normal AP, and there is also the additional burden of the DS5535 for DV 2022, folks. And there's a lot more of those sort of cases, but also there's some just really bizarre refusals happening. A gentleman contacted me the other day about Morocco and describing some of the refusals there, which are just not correct refusals. And so I'm a little worried that they're being overzealous in just refusing. They've scheduled a lot of cases, but for whatever reason, they're refusing a lot of cases. So we have to see them turn that round to being a flood, what should be a flood of issuances over the next few days. So, fingers crossed. Otherwise, they may even struggle to get to 50,000. And up to now, I've been projecting that they've done enough to get to 52 or 53,000 issuances. Don't forget there is adjustment of status going on as well. So those numbers sort of impact that overall number. But I have a bet with someone also, which I think they've got to go above 48,000. Otherwise, I lose that bet. So I don't want to lose a bet. And I want to see as many of you issued visas as possible. So I'm hoping that they will actually be going for it pretty quickly and issuing a lot of visas. Please, are they done with DV 2022? Ghana, Accra Embassy should be sued. Accra Embassy have been the subject of discussion in some of the lawsuits, but doesn't seem like there can be anything done to force them to do their job. I'm convinced that Accra Embassy just expect to let people, lose their chance. They're not doing anything special. They're not helping people. The messages from almost every embassy that I've seen is, pretty much the same line. We've scheduled all of our interviews for September. If we get any cancellations, we'll let you know, kind of thing. But no, I mean, Accra is not suddenly going to wake up tomorrow and schedule a bunch of interviews between now and the end of September. That's not going to happen. Sorry to disappoint you, but that's the reality, right? Okay. Please, I'm a 2023 winner, AF 60,000. Please, is that really safe for me as I'm based in Japan? So no, that's not a safe number. I wouldn't call that a safe number. I don't know how risky that is because I don't know the highest case number and I don't know the distribution of where the holes are and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to say it's an unsafe number, but it's certainly not safe, right? It's not a safe number. The fact that you're in Japan makes things a little bit more difficult as well because they won't recognize your educational documents, your other documents. And so it will take a little bit of time for your documents to be accepted after interview if you were to get an interview. So, that's another aspect. Okay. Thanks for the information. I submitted DS260, but you didn't get an appointment yet. Most people have not got an appointment yet. If your case number is not current, you're not going to get a quick an appointment, right? This one is Anna is saying she's not got her 2NL yet, and the case number is 400, give or take. So she is current, but hasn't had her appointment yet. Well, because they've released the visa bulletin, we can now expect within a few days they'll start scheduling November interviews for DV 2023. So, and then just be a little bit patient, okay? If you were not processed in time for an October interview, you may now be processed in time for a November interview, but you just have to wait and see whether that that happens or not. Okay. Okay. I don't know about Saudi Arabia specifically, but plenty of embassies have taken DV 2023 interviews for October. Okay. Joel M. Bock official says, winner of DV 2023, and I've already been scheduled for interview next month. Great. When my case gets approved, positive thinking, and I travel to the States this year and get married in January next year, and then the next thing is, can I get my wife to travel with the case USA next year? How will that work? Right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work like that. If you are dating someone now that you're very much in love with, you should get married right now. You should have got married months ago, right? It would be smart to marry before your DV interview actually happens. That's what you should do if it's a real genuine marriage. If you, on the other hand, you do what you say you're going to do, you're going to go to the interview as a single person, you're then going to get married and then go to the USA, then it will take 2 to 3 years to bring your new spouse with you. You'll get no benefit from the DV lottery in terms of speed because you chose to go down a slower path. And you made that decision when you chose to not get married before you submitted your DS-260 and before you were interviewed. I wish you'd done it the other way, because if you were in a genuine, real marriage and a real relationship and you got married, the COs understand that. They know that someone who is suddenly has won a green card opportunity is now looking to move to America, but they are in a real, genuine relationship. The most obvious thing in the world, the most realistic, most human thing is you turn to that spouse of yours or that partner of yours and you say, I can't leave this country without you. I want to take you with me. Let's get married, right? And COs understand that. They accept that. That's normal. You just have to prove that it's a genuine relationship, right? Can't be a fake marriage just to get another green card. They will see through that. But it is very normal to take someone that you're in love with and that you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you don't want to leave the country and not take them with you. So, unfortunately, people are sometimes badly advised about that. And they're told that if you get married and if you do this and if you do that, you're going to be refused. But that's stupid. People say those things. When will the interview date be emailed? The interview 2NLs, they send a 2NL out. They go out a few days after the visa bulletin, up until the end of the month, roughly speaking. So today's the 7th. I expect they'll be sending some 2NLs out maybe at the end of this week if this is a genuine visa bulletin, or early next week. And then that might continue up until the end of the month. Okay. Is a bank statement for a joint bank account enough? Already answered that one. Thank you for all the help. AF 22, AF some number, I don't know what number, put on AP after the interview, waited 4 months of being on AP, and now you've both arrived in Dallas. That's awesome. Diego Damuna TV. Okay. And you chose to live in Dallas. Nice. So good luck there. I hope that works out well for you. Texas is pretty hot right now, as I'm sure you've realized. Mind you, where I live has been 111 degrees over the last few days. It's been stupidly hot. Can a DV 2023 selectee apply for DV 2024? Absolutely. Everyone should. Whether you think your number is safe or not, just go ahead and apply again. There's no cost to it. It doesn't affect your DV 2023 win in any way, and maybe you win again, right? So you never know what's going to happen. You always keep your options open, right? So go ahead and enter again. Why not? In fact, I'm going to enter in DV 2024, just for the hell of it. Elvis, you can do anything. Welcome back. Hi, Brit. AF 6900. I have work travel history in Afghanistan and Qatar. Does it mean automatic AP? Not automatic AP. I think, to be perfectly frank, it increases your chance of being given, of being asked to fill out a DS 5535. But to counter that, to make that less likely, you make sure your DS 260 is fully filled out, your complete address history, your complete work history, your complete travel history. You make sure those things are properly filled out in your DS 260. Education, all of it. You want to be fully transparent, right? Give them all the information you can as early as possible. And then after you've done all that, take a filled out DS 5535 with you to the interview. And if that's discussed in the interview and they say, oh yeah, we're going to ask you to fill out a DS 5535, you pull it out and you give it to them. If they say that's what they're going to do, you provide it right there and then. And that may be enough to actually say, okay, fine, we'll get ahead and we'll process this. Or maybe they laugh and say, okay, don't worry about it. We're fine. We can see you're genuine, right? So just do that. Can you tell us about the interviews, please? What sort of questions they're going to ask us? And thank you so much. People often ask me this. I have a page. I have an interview questions, interview experiences page on my blog, BritSimonSays.com, and then you go to interview experiences. It's an important page for you to look at. I maintain it and let people put in there their experience of how their interview was. And the main thing I want you to understand by reading all of those experiences is how easy the interviews are. You don't have to do any preparation for the questions, etc. There's no complicated questions. They're not trying to catch you out. It's just a conversation. There are a few questions that are asked for a very specific reason, and you'll see some of those questions come up time and time again in some of the interviews. But generally speaking, the interview is quick. It's probably 3 or 4 minutes of time, maybe 5 to 10 minutes would be a long interview, right? But many interviews take literally 5 minutes or less, right? And so it's there's a couple of questions. What do you plan to do in America? Or have you got any family in America? Have you got any friends? What sort of work do you do? Those sort of things, right? What do you plan to do in America? They want to know about what your plan is. Do you have a sensible plan? If you say, if they say, okay, I see you're a plumber. What do you plan to do in America? And you say you want to be an astronaut, and you've got no skills that mean you could be an astronaut. That's probably not a very good answer, because it's not a very good plan, right? You should probably say, well, I'm already experienced as a plumber. I've made a very good living at it. I'm going to retrain. I'm going to take the certification and be a plumber in America. That's what I plan to do. Great. You'll pass your interview. No problem, because you've got a realistic plan, right? And by the way, plumbers earn a lot of money over here. So everybody's going to feel good about that plan, right? It should be fairly obvious. It'll be fairly obvious to you if you just think it through and read some of those interview experiences. Noyan says, and Noyan, many of you may not know, but Noyan is one of the people that helps us with all of the data and encouraging, DV winners all over the place. So Noyan's saying maybe they'll make all regions current in the next one. I know he's joking, because this stuff isn't really a mystery, but yeah, okay, I'll accept that. Let's not be surprised. Okay. What does this mean for people with high case numbers? Don't read anything into it. People with high case numbers, yes, they've got more of a concern. If you've got an Asia region number of 23,000, yeah, that's a pretty high number, and there's some concern in that, right? But this particular VB doesn't really mean anything about that. Does KCC do public mistakes? It's been more than 3 hours now. Yeah. Of course they do. And by the way, it's not KCC that published the visa bulletin. But yes, I've seen visa bulletins corrected with minor mistakes, normally where they've got, one or two little mistakes. I've seen those corrections happen. So it wouldn't be a total shock to see this visa bulletin corrected. And it also wouldn't be a total shock to see it remain in place as is. Okay, so let's just wait and see what happens in the next couple of days. Now, it'll be in the next couple of days. Won't be later than that. It'll be in that sort of timeline. Okay, novella. Only selectee for my country in the Caribbean. You're the what? Only selectee for your country. Oh, you're literally the only case. That's amazing. Is there a case? Is there a chance that the case number is too high for the region? AS 3100 isn't that low, but again, it depends how many holes there are in front of you and how many people apply for the process in front of you, and that sort of thing. And as I say, I don't have the numbers yet. I don't know what the highest case number is, so it's too early to say. Okay, and I don't think you should be listening to anybody that says they know exactly, that your case number is safe or not safe or anything else. Literally, nobody knows that, right? I mean, honestly, if I don't know that, nobody knows that. I can promise you nobody knows because nobody's got the data. Christopher Vernon. Hey, Brit, 2022 winner from Sydney. Suva were goddamn amazing. Passport is stamped. Fantastic. Moving to NYC in October. Thanks for all your help. That's awesome, Chris. That's really good news. And yeah, Suva. Love Suva. I still haven't sent them that little gift I've planned for them, but I will do. Is it over for 2022 winners? Look, it won't be over until 30th of September. But let's be honest. They're not gonna wait until the 8th, 9th, 10th of September and then say, you know what, we forgot to schedule 1,000 cases. Of course, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen maybe between now and the end of the month is a few cases here and a few cases there. And that's exactly what they've been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, or 3 weeks at least, 4 weeks, I think now. Just a few cases here and there. So it is time to understand that. It's not time to say DV 2022 is over, because it's not over until the end of 30th of September. But if you're thinking there's going to be a massive amount of interviews suddenly arranged, you're dreaming. It's not going to happen. Okay, just a few here and there. All right. When will the next VB come out? Well, a month from now. I mean, this one's only been out a few hours. Can you enjoy this one first, would you? Facts Inside. I hope you're doing well. Thank you. I am. Apart from the fact that I've been sitting on a meeting all day, I should have traveled. It was in Austin, Texas. I couldn't be bothered, to be honest with you. So I attended this meeting for 2 days on, by Zoom or whatever. It's hard work. Okay, Koba. Case number 13K 2023, but it's submitted late July 7th. What month can I be scheduled? Well, you're not current yet. So when you're current, which might be in December, it might be in January. Maybe your case has been processed by then, probably will be, and you'll be scheduled on time. So no biggie. Patience, right? Just relax. Your number is really good. July 7th doesn't make any difference. The fact that you're calling that late doesn't make any difference. It'll be processed. We can see there is good processing happening, throughout the case number ranges. So it's absolutely clear. I mean, some of these recent arguments about unlocking and everything else, it's just absolutely clear now what's happening. I don't understand why people can't see it. And some people will still argue with me, but it's very clear that DS260 processing is working well in DV 2023. And it's very clear that lots of cases that have unlocked have been scheduled for interviews. I mean, these things are just very clear now. So there are some people who childishly want to continue those arguments, or ignorantly want to continue those arguments in the case of some of the lawyers. But that argument is over now. I mean, it's just obvious, right? So I'm hoping that people understand that. And so for you, your real concern is your case number. And in your case, Cobra, your case number is low. So you're going to be fine, okay? Moo. Do you think that DV 2023 will go wrong this way we see in VB? Oh, I see what you're saying. No, even if this VB is real, even if it's not corrected, I don't think anybody should be freaking out about this. It's fine. It's actually, if this is real, to me, it's a sign of a very healthy process happening behind the scenes, which is lots of DS260s being processed for them to increase rapidly the number of people who are ready for interview. If that's what's going on, which is what I would assume, if these numbers are real, then that's a very healthy thing. Okay, so I wouldn't be worried about that at all. Case number is going to be the most important thing in DV 2023. Okay. Opened DS in May 23 and closed it May 20th. May delay my appointment. I have no idea because you didn't tell me your case number, you didn't tell me your year, your region, or anything else. The only way, if assuming you're DV 2023, the only way that will affect you is if you made a very significant change. Well, you close it on May 20th. I mean, no, it's not going to affect you. You close it May 20th, you'll be fine. It's not going to affect you at all if it's DV 2023. If you're DV 2022, well, you've got different problems, right? Loma, OC 244244. During police clearance, the policeman whose service wrote our height incorrectly was told to me by my son at home. Can I correct it during? Nobody gives a shit. The things you people find to worry about sometimes cracks me up. Honestly, I had a guy once who told me that in the medical, they'd pointed out one of his legs was shorter than the other. Nobody cares. Nobody cares whether you're 5'10" or 5'8" or 6'7", right? That's not a problem. Don't worry about silly, trivial things. Relax. You're fine. It doesn't matter if you're the wrong height. Unless someone wrote in, you're 6 foot tall and they wrote in that you're 3 foot tall and there's an obvious identity problem. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. You're probably talking about a couple of inches and nobody's going to notice or care, right? US Department wrote this on Facebook today. Our teams are working to reduce visa appointment wait times. Yeah, I saw that. We've waived interviews for key categories, hired new staff, blah, 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 blah. None of that affects DV. That is not to do with DV. Sorry, but it's got nothing to do with it. Opened, yeah, already talked about that one. Appreciate the information you provided. I agree with you that it seems they might made some mistakes. It would be corrected soon. Yeah, maybe. We'll have to see. I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm just guessing, same as a lot of you. I almost think by the time we get to the end of this video, someone's going to be pinging me saying, "Oh, they corrected it." I'm just refreshing the page just in case. I'll do that again before we get to the end of the video here. Okay. Fact inside. Have a question. 2023 winner, case number AS7000. Have entered my older passport for DS260. Now my PP passport is cancelled after the new PP. Is there any trouble? No, not at all. You can do two things. Like with an AS7000, it's not a particularly low case number. So you have time to unlock and correct your DS260 if you want, but it's not essential. The other thing that you can do is you can actually just go to the interview with the old passport and the new passport, right? You can do that. Now, the only thing I would say is that if you start using your new passport and you start traveling and you've got travel history on that, then personally, I would say if you know you're going to be using your new passport, then you should unlock your DS260 because it's a significant change and you don't want to give the impression that you're hiding some travel, right? So that's the only time I would say, look, you really should unlock because you're going to be using your passport a lot, right? For traveling. Okay. Let's see. When shall I expect the interview appointment for case number 2023 AF32000? Thanks in advance. It'll be in, probably spring of next year. I don't know exactly what time, date, month, I'm not going to try and guess those things, but it clearly won't be in the next couple of months, and it's probably not going to be until March, April, May, somewhere around about that time. It'll be something like that. Do I need to unlock my DS260 or inform KCC if I move before getting an interview, moving to a city where the US Embassy? No, you don't. For in-country moves, where your address changes, but you're in the same country or in the same city, there's no need to unlock every time you do that. There's no need to unlock for that. DV 2022, doing AOS in the US. Did fingerprints, good. Waiting for interview, getting close. US CIS requested my file from KCC. That's good. Transferred. KCC emailed saying why I paid only one DV fee instead of 3. Oh shit! Did you? I explained to them that my family are following to join. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So you've given them that explanation that says, yeah, only one of the family is going to do your AOS process here. You're going to file an I-824 for the follow to join, and that your spouse and your child or whatever is going to interview in the home country. That's all fine. You want to make sure you've made that very, very clear to KCC, and they should send the case across. You also, given the time, you also want to enlist the help of the local embassy. You need to book an appointment at the embassy for the last few days of September. You want to book an appointment for like the 27th, 28th, 29th. And ideally, you want to email them and get them on your side. And they actually like doing this. The I-824 is kind of like a challenge for them, right? And you can make it that way, and you can sort of email and say, I really want your help with this because it's my only chance for us to, all be together in the USA. And what you'll find is that normally someone at the consulate, at the embassy will get involved and invested in your story, and they'll want to help you. They're nice people. They're generally nice people, and the I-824 is a no-brainer for them. So it's a good chance for them to help someone do a very casual interview and make someone's life change in a heartbeat without any of the pressure of having to actually make a real decision, because the real decision is going to be made on your interview in America, and that's got to happen first. But you do need to be preparing yourself with the embassy interview for the I-824 process, okay? And if you're not already following someone's mum in the immigration forum, you should be, because she is the absolute expert on all of those adjustment of status matters. 100% of the time you trust someone's mum. I can't stress that enough. She helped me through my process. She's been doing it for as long as I've been talking to people about DV and more. She's been doing the same thing, but specializing in adjustment of status. She knows more about DV-related AOS than anyone else that I know. Including lawyers. And there's several lawyers I love and admire and respect, but none of them know DV adjustment of status as well as mum. So there you go. And she's not my mum, by the way. It's just what I call her. Okay. Hi, brother. Must we pay for the lawsuit for DV 2022 if we get the visa before the end of September? If you've already enrolled in a lawsuit, I'm sort of reading this. Must you pay for the lawsuit? Well, yeah. If read the terms of your contract. If you've agreed with a lawyer to have them represent you, and you then get your visa, whether you feel they got you your visa or not, you're paying the lawyers. That's the way it works. They, I'm sure, made that very clear. Just did explain why the visa bulletin is the same. It's either a mistake or there's a good reason for it, and you'll have to rewind to understand my reasoning. 2023 winner from Bolivia, bienvenido. SA112X. Is that a high number for South America? No, it isn't. When is the November visa bulletin releasing? Well, November interviews have just been released in the visa bulletin today, but there's absolutely no change in the visa bulletin, which makes me suspect it was a mistake. Okay. The old photos. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that question is. Did Adia start scheduling for 2023? I believe so, yes. I think I heard at least one person report back that they've received their interview, I think, but I'm not tracking this religiously and exactly by every embassy. I must admit I've got a little bit lazy because these days with the data available from Zarthisius and from Frank, we've got all the data. I don't track it anymore manually myself. So one of the winners, DV 2023, case number AF32000, but the US Embassy refused me VI times, probably 6 times before, by marriage or medical case. So you've been trying just about every bloody way to get to the USA, and they keep refusing you. And probably you've probably asked for non-immigrant visas, and one of the major reasons that they refuse non-immigrant visas is because they suspect a person is trying to get to America and wants to live there, which you've now proven by entering and winning and processing the DV lottery. However, the fact that you've proven that they were right all along doesn't mean that they'll fail you, that they'll deny you in this particular case, in the DV case, because it's an immigrant visa. It's just, so the times you were refused before, as long as you didn't come up with any lies or bullshit and fraud, then you won't have any problems from the refusals from before. It's a different case. Okay. There's a great question. EU 6000 from Goga. Do you have to file a DS260 if you're doing adjustment of status? So it's not strictly speaking required, but it is helpful. I would just say to you, don't do it too soon. Don't do it. You got a 6000 case. Yeah, you can go ahead and do it. Go ahead and file a DS260. The reason that you do it, there's 2 ways that you tell KCC you're doing adjustment of status. One is you send the payment to them, and that's good. They mark that down. But also by filing the DS260, in my belief, and it's only a belief, I don't have solid proof, but I know Mum feels this way too, someone's mum. In my belief, filing the DS260 makes it a little bit easier for them to then send the case to USCIS later on when you're having your interview, because that's one of the steps that has to happen in adjustment of status. So yes, I would say file the DS260. You don't have to if you, for some reason, don't want to, but I would personally. It just makes it a little easier. Charlie says, thanks for all the help. DV 2022 OC 200. Now staying in Colorado. Hubby starts the new job in 2 weeks as a commercial pilot. Fantastic. Suva saved us, which is awesome. Yes, they are. They didn't ask me about my plans at all. 2 questions only. Children and lots of STEM qualifications, and told I was successful. Cheers from Charlie. That's awesome. And Colorado, beautiful, beautiful state. I mean, it's cold in the winter, but fantastic, fantastic state, beautiful views. I drive a Jeep, an off-road Jeep. So I should get over to Colorado sometime and drive my car around there. I've also got an RV. So I can throw the Jeep on the back of the RV and go off into the distance. Anyway, but yeah, congratulations, Charlie. Good luck to you. Okay, let's see. 2022, don't receive any message about your interview. Yep, I don't think it's going to work out, Dunia. I think realistically, we're starting to see that there's a very, very small amount of time left, and there's about 30,000 people that have been fully processed, and they're in AV status, and they're not going to get interviews. About 30,000 people, about 3 out of every 10. Okay, so and the percentages are, it's pretty horrific percentages. Is there any problem for applying with the same photo in 2 years, October 22 and October 21? I'm a DV 2023 winner. Right. So in DV 2018, so there's always been a rule about photos that you're supposed to take when you submit your your entry, the photo is supposed to be six months old or less, right? And that rule stayed in place for a long time and wasn't modified until 2018. Now, on that rule alone, you shouldn't have done what you did. You made a mistake because you didn't read the instructions, and that's, that was a daft thing to do. And now you're giving yourself some stress about it, right? However, to make things a little bit worse, even in DV 2018, they introduced an additional rule that specifically said you must not use an interview, use a photo from a previous year's entry, right? So exactly what you've done, right? And that to me told me that they had photo recognition capabilities that could recognize, not just based on the exadata, but also, on exadata, that's what I use at work, on the EXIF data, not just based on that, but also just based on the photo recognition between two photos, they would be able to search someone who didn't follow that rule. Having said that, right? So you've broken the rules. You've broken actually two rules. Having said that, are you likely to be refused for that? No, you're not likely to be refused. I've not seen very many refusals for photos. The only time I've seen photos being refused because they're old photos is when someone submits a really old photo and their physical appearance has changed a lot. They send in a photo 10 years old, they look young and buff and handsome, and then they get to the interview and they're old and gray like me, right? And so the CO says, well, you obviously just didn't follow the bloody instructions, you're disqualified, right? But that's only because of the physical appearance. It's not based on the electronic data on the photo or anything else, okay? And like I say, the reused photo thing has not resulted in disqualifications in any volume at all. The 2020 and 2021 update is that the appeal will happen on September 16th. The lawyers are saying, by the way, and several of the lawyers have said, it could take 3 months before we have an answer. So September 16th, there's going to be oral argument heard before a panel of judges, 3 judges, for all the 2020 and 2021 cases. Various lawyers for us are arguing: Jesse Bless, Charles Cook, Raphael, I think maybe that's it. Perhaps Nicolette Glazer, I'm not sure. But anyway, the main 3 will be the 3 I just mentioned. Jesse Bless represents the DV 2020 cases. Jesse is now in his own practice, by the way, which is good news for us because he can decide exactly what he wants to take on. So good luck, Jesse. But anyway, Jesse and team are going to be representing the hopes of the 2020 and 2021 folks on September 16th in front of a panel of judges. And then that panel of judges will take that information away, all of the written information, all of the oral argument, etc. And they could take about 3 months to make a decision. So we're going to have to be patient. You're just going to have to suck it up and wait. And people will say, oh, I don't want to wait. We waited long enough. You don't have to wait. You can give up if you want. But obviously, that would be a silly thing to do. It would be wiser to just, just try and be patient. Okay. What's my expectation for the good luck case if we have positive results? Yeah, I don't know whether we're going to win or not. I hope so. I tend to believe we will. I think we're in a very good position for 2021 and 2020 cases. So yeah, I think we're going to win, but I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to see. Malaysia, I just want to thank you. Continued support. Any chance to get scheduled in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur embassy? Yeah, absolutely. Your case number is a little bit on the high side, but we'll have to wait and see. I can't comment too much on that now. It's too early. This is an interesting question. Will the 2020 and 2021 work impact, because there's all those visas to issue, will that affect DV 2023? Right. There are about 20,000 visas reserved for the 2 cases, a bit more than 20,000, right? That's going to be about 10,000 people. 10,000 cases, 20,000 visas, roughly about 10,000 cases. They could, if they wanted to, I'm not saying they will, but they could do all of that work in basically 1 month, maybe 2 months. They could do that, right? So it doesn't have to be a major problem for DV 2023. There is more than enough time, since they've got a full 12 months for DV 2023. There's more than enough time to process and interview all the cases. They've reached nearly 50,000 in DV 2022, and they only worked 6 or 7 months. They had several months off, so there's more than enough time for them to issue all the cases for 2021, 2020, and 2023 in the same year. But I suspect that they'll probably give a longer time period for the 2020 and 2021 cases to be issued. They'll spread the load a little bit more. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Your explanation gives them a solid excuse to leave the VB as it is. I don't think the government are listening to me and making decisions based on what I say. I honestly don't think I'm that important. So there you go. But my explanation, someone said this funny thing to me the other day. It was a guy who was really pissed off with me and always chooses to argue with me over things. And he was complaining because I was pointing out that Curtis was wrong about something. And he was complaining that I was disturbing Curtis so much that Curtis wasn't going to be able to focus on the September 16th hearing, and I was going to mess it up and ruin it for all the people in DV. All the people in DV, the people I've been supporting for 10 years for free, I'm going to mess it up for them because I'm such a reckless, hopeless person, right? That's what this guy was saying. He was such a bloody idiot. And meanwhile, Curtis was posting pictures of lambs jumping through hoops or something. I mean, he was not exactly focused on September 16th. It was just funny. And but this guy from Turkey couldn't see the funny side of that, or the funny side and the silly side of his comments. He got very worked up. A couple of people did about those comments. That was on unlocking, I think. I don't know. They choose to argue with me sometimes over all sorts of reasons, but there you go. You mentioned significant change that affected the DS260. Can you please list a few of the significant changes that affect the DS260? Oh man. Okay. In general, Samuel, it's the things that I think are important are things that affect your ID, right? And also the requirements of the lottery, right? So your ID is your name, your passport number, to some extent your address, but not so much your current address. Then your education history, that's important because that affects your ability to actually meet the requirements of the DV. To me, it's important that you completely put in your social media footprint, all these social media accounts and that sort of thing. Your work history is important. Your address history is important. All those things are important, right? What's not important is when someone who has listed out all of their education, and 5 schools ago, when they were 12 years old, the name of their school was, slightly misspelled, right? And they say, should I unlock to correct that name? No, that's completely trivial, unnecessary. Same thing for an old address. You put the address in. You meant to write in number 15 Anytown Street, and you wrote in number 17 Anytown Street. Nobody cares. It's not important if that address was from 10 years ago. Nobody cares, right? It's not an important thing. But things that change your identity, for example, or that limit their ability to do a background check, your place of birth, your full legal name, those sort of things. Those things are important. Okay. Is it a problem if someone has 2 passports with different names? One passport says HS and the other says SH. In the DS260, they put HS as their main name and SH under other name. Oh, God. I mean, it's not a problem because you've listed it in the DS260. You've listed both versions, but why have you got 2 versions? right? And which of those versions matches your birth certificate, and which therefore is your legal name, right? So yeah, but technically speaking, no, it's not right that you've got two passports. One of them is invalid, right? I wouldn't be showing that second passport personally, because it's, it's not valid, right? Okay. Case number is 19K. Had a baby in August. Should I reopen the DS or until the appointment? I'm assuming a DV 2023. You absolutely unlock and you add your baby now. You don't wait until the bloody appointment. Okay. And please ignore the people that suggest you shouldn't be unlocking. In fact, this whole thing with the unlocking is quite funny. Curtis and Raphael started arguments with me because they were saying nobody in 2023 should unlock, right? Then Curtis had to retract that and went back on that because he realized that that's screwing people up in DV 2022, that people had written to KCC, said they had moved to country B and they now live in country A, but and could they please move their interview, but they didn't unlock their forms because of the bad advice that Curtis was giving them. And of course, lo and behold, they then get refused an interview because they didn't actually live in the place where they told KCC they lived. So Curtis modified his statements, even though he's still wrong. He modified it a little bit. Then Nicolette Glazer sort of got on the bandwagon the other day, and she said nobody should unlock, but she at least included some of the advice that I'd given, which was, she said, don't unlock unless you have added a spouse, a child, or I can't remember what the third thing she said, or a change of address perhaps. But she gave at least a couple of exceptions, which were sensible suggestions. She still argued with me, still not very bright, but nevertheless, at least she understood that some unlockings are necessary, even if it caused a delay. But what none of them have understood yet, because they're just not really too clued up, is the point I made in a video just recently, that DS260 processing is going very well. It's demonstrably going very well. And a number of people have unlocked and been scheduled for interviews. So there's just no way that we're seeing the same problems we saw in DB 2022. It's done. It's that argument is over, because it's just obvious now. But for your particular case, Adil, you must unlock your case, and the earlier you do it, the better, right? You don't want to get to the interview and start dealing with trying to add your baby at that time. It's nuts, right? You had a baby, add the baby. It's like if you get married, that's a very significant thing. If you get married, if you have a baby, it's on you to let the government know that your status has changed significantly. It is not okay to just pretend that you haven't had that life status change, right? You need to make that change. Okay. Okay, we're over an hour. I've applied 4 times and never won. Do you get closer each year, or can you possibly fail to get forever to get a green card? What an interesting but slightly sad question, Gil. Depending on your region, your chance of selection is about 1 in 100. And I often say that as saying once in every 100 years, because if you put it the second way, it makes it clear how hard it is to actually be selected for the DV lottery. So yes, you could apply. I've known people who've applied 20 times and never won, 20 years and never won, right? So do you get closer each year? No, you don't get closer. Every year is its independent chance. It's like tossing a coin, right? Heads or tails, standard thing. You toss a coin in the air, heads or tails. If you've had, let's say you toss the coin 10 times in a row and it's heads every single time, is the chance of it being heads or tails, different on the 11th toss of the coin? No, because the coin doesn't know. It's got no intelligence. It doesn't know about the previous 10 tosses, right? Every time is a 50-50 chance. And in the same way, every lottery is just the same chance. It's a random selection process. And your chance, as I say, depending on the region, is something around about 1 in 100. It's actually 1 in 20 or so in Oceania. It's about 1 in 100 in Europe. It has been as high as 1 in 200 in Africa. So yeah, it's you just have to keep on trying and you hope to be lucky. Okay. Almost Murad says, yes, you're following her. She's doing an amazing job talking about someone's mum. Yes, she is. Love her to death. I know her personally, and she's a lovely person. And I'm just so thrilled and excited that she's continued doing that work for all the years that she has, and she's been doing it longer than I have, right? Since she was a 2013 winner, I was a 2014 winner, right? So she, she's amazing. And Susie Q in that same forum, also a 2013 winner, and they're both from African region, by the way. And I know them both. They both live within 30 miles of me. Anyway, some trivia for you. Right. Okay, one more question, then I'm going to call that a day. A quick one. What are my Telegram details? I don't take direct messages on Telegram or email or any other way. I don't answer direct messages, like private messages. The reason for that is, and someone put this beautifully today on Telegram, they answered for me. The main reason is I don't, if I answer a question for you individually, it only helps you. Whereas if I answer it in public, it helps other people too, right? That's one reason. Second reason, every time Curtis gets pissed off with me, he likes to point out that I'm, in his opinion, which is bullshit, I don't think this is his opinion, that I'm giving legal advice. And if I were to answer questions individually, privately, there may be an increased suspicion of that, right? That's one of the reasons I don't do it. It's not a solid reason, because actually Curtis's opinion on that is utter bullshit. And Curtis, by the way, if you're listening, Curtis, it may not have occurred to you that actually when you've been on my videos and you've been answering questions and you've been helping me in what I do, then if I was providing UPL, you would have been a co-conspirator of that crime. So I guess you're probably not going to do anything about it, but feel free to report it, Curtis, if you feel you want to. That's up to you. All right. Okay. So anyway, that's why I don't answer questions privately. So that's why I won't give you my Telegram details. But if you see me around, my name is Simon Britton in Telegram. So you'll see me around. Okay, last question then. Okay, last question here. Accra. Very appropriate we finish on this. Accra Embassy worry me a little bit still. I want to see what they do, and I'm not really going to know this for sure. You'll probably know more than I will, because we have to see whether Accra have got out of the mode that they were in. They scheduled, I think, 38 cases for September, and they were scheduling something between 10 and 30 cases during all the months in DV 2022, which is absolutely not enough. It was a pathetic performance, really bad performance. Now, the question is, moving forward into DV 2023, are they going to stay with that level of interviews, right? Now, I won't know that until January. I'll only be able to see that in January. You may know it sooner because you're local. You can find out, you could even go to the embassy and see, are they interviewing DV people? You may know people that are being interviewed, so you can see how many people they're being interviewed. Are they perhaps scheduling a lot of cases or still very few cases? So you may know earlier. What I don't want anyone to do is to be in the position where you're in an AV queue for Accra Embassy and you can't move out of it. Right now, being in an AV queue means that you're current and that your case is processed, DS-260 is processed. And then you get assigned into the embassy. And if the embassy chooses not to interview many people, you could be there for a long, long time, right? So I don't want anyone or very many cases to go into the AV queue at Accra, because I'm assuming that they will interview some people. So if we've only got the first couple of months of cases and they have to spread that out over 3 or 4 or 5 months, that's probably not too bad. But if they start building up a big backlog, they'll never fix it, and that's the problem. And you can't transfer out, so that's a problem. Anyway, we'll call that a day. I'm just literally going to refresh this page and see if they've fixed the visa bulletin, or see whether we're stuck with it for at least another day. It's 5 o'clock, so yeah, it's too late for them to fix it. It looks like it's not being fixed. So this might be the real visa bulletin. We'll have to see. It doesn't. It does actually talk about retrogression for other areas, but this in DV is not retrogression. It's just no movement. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me today's live. Thanks for all your questions, and do make sure you subscribe to the channel. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.